Yeah, I've got a couple of stories here on the computer. When I was a young priest, I remember going to see an old lady. She was a regular churchgoer, and she'd had a stroke. And since she'd had a stroke, she never spoke, and she'd never spoken at all. And I had to go and give her the sick communion. And I went and sat down with her, not really expecting a lot, to be honest. And I opened up the liturgy and started saying the liturgy, and she joined in. And she joined in all the way through, all the prayers, and then finished. And then she never spoke again until she died. And that's a classic example of me of the value of liturgy. That it's in our darkest days. It's in the moments where we can't act for ourselves. That we've got this word that's washed into our very being, and that upholds us and sustains us. And that was one of the first times I really thought, God, liturgy is just so right.
I think one of the other things for me is that extemporary prayer is okay, but it's actually quite hard work, because that kind of spontaneity is very hard to sustain.
Yes, especially if you're a minister.
And it can become desperately wordy if you're not careful, or it can lose its drift. Whereas if you really know the things that you want to pray, and somebody's already put them in words that say it for you, it's so much more focused, and the clarity of some of these Celtic style prayers or other things that just moved in sync with them, because we weren't bound to everything having to be Celtic, far from
No.
but just things that have got some substance to them but aren't overly convoluted. I remember we did the Teach Us Dear Lord, which is Psalm 90, but I remember the very first time I heard that, and I was in YWAM in Canada, and hearing those words sung, one, it was so beautiful, and two, just that I felt like I wanted to adopt that prayer for the whole of my life, and that was one of the ones that I brought to the office when we were preparing it, because it was so precious to me. And another one was the I Trust in Thee, O Lord. I remember
that's one of my
1978.
Yeah. I remember Anna singing that.
Yeah. I remember Anna singing it as well. But I remember Marcia actually teaching it to us as part of one of our classes in Canada, and it's written there amongst my notes. I know the exact moment when it came to me. My times are in Thy hands, and at the time I was as it were, in exile from Holy Island. I was waiting to go back and just trusting that Roland Walls knew what he was doing.
Yeah, but the good thing about it as well, I can identify totally with that prayer as well, and I think that's, if you've got prayers that are substantial, then they resonate with other people, don't they? And we'll just get into it. Final bit from Roland: keep it short and simple. Now, as I remember when we tried to put our office together, I remember the morning office. I think you had 28 pages.
No.
Did you not? You had an awful lot.
No. I think what you're thinking of, when we were doing the complins, our first complins, we had
that's the Aiden one.
We had an Aiden and a pulpit, and they both were quite long, and they still are compared to the other complins. And if you had them handwritten and stuck together on bits of paper, they went over several pages.
But we got there, and I mean, your intention, I know, because it's what you like.
Not to miss anything.
Not to miss anything. I've just been out in Andy's shed yesterday, and I mean, sitting in his living room now is such a picture of the past, because I said we used to sit at home when we've lived together at different points, and gradually the floor would disappear. Andy would be sitting on the floor surrounded by papers. I'd be on a chair, and eventually the floor would just disappear and pages would appear. And what we had to do when we do the office, we had to decide what was important. Was it going to flow in the rhythm of the office as well? Because that was important. And I mean, I think our main desire was people could do this on the move. You know, people could... I've said here, or I've written that, you could do this in a small group, a large group, over a cup of coffee. You could do it on the bus, on the train, where you were travelling.
People have done all of those things.
Yeah. And also I've got somebody up a mountainside in Tibet, as one group did.
And midday office would be said in the time it takes to boil a kettle, or you could say it several times in the time it takes to boil a kettle in the States, because they're on a different wattage. But or you could do it the time it takes to go to the toilet if you're at work, come back again. You know,
that was
just that kind of in the middle of everyday life. And some of the things that we didn't include as meditations, John, ended up
other places.
Yeah, they came in as daily readings and so on, particularly in some of those first ones.
Yeah. Now, what I'm aware of, we should have done this at the beginning, but we didn't, because we always jump to the conclusion that when you talk about a daily office, everybody knows what you're talking about. Now, when we first started off, a lot of the people that we were involved with didn't know what we were talking about. So let's just put a couple of bits in. A daily office simply is a fixed set of prayers, readings and songs that are used or said or sung every day. Sometimes, depending on the tradition, we might do it on a Sunday. Now, what we agreed to do, I don't know whether you still do this in the Northumbria community, was not to have an office on a Sunday and not to have a Eucharist, so that people could go out to church. And that was an emphasis that we had back then.
I think even then, what we did was we said we wouldn't have a Sunday Eucharist, because what we didn't want was people vacating the churches in order to come to us.
That's exactly right.
Whether anybody ever went to church was a totally different issue. And then I think the other thing was, on the island, we used to do office publicly, and we did it every day but Sunday. Yeah. Now, say at Hetton, they've always done office for years, right the way through. The only time you might not get it might be, say, on a Thursday night, if there were people who had been staying for the week had gone, and the ones who were coming for the weekend hadn't arrived. Then there might not be a night compline or something. Yeah.
Also, most offices, daily offices, are made up of morning and evening prayer, and hopefully as well midday prayer. Also, some monastic communities have the 7 prayers, which will go on through the night. We didn't think that was a good idea when we're trying to bring up our families as well. Now, usually an office, sorry, I'll just get this bit now. Usually an office consists of prayers and meditations, readings from the Psalms and Scripture, very important, and canticles and songs. Sorry, you want to add?
All I was going to say is, as well, I don't want anybody getting the impression that most people, say, from the community, would ever keep up a rhythm of doing morning prayer, midday prayer, evening prayer, compline every day. Yeah. There would be some people, perhaps somebody who was retired or someone who was out of work or whatever, who might decide that it was going to be their priority to keep up each of those offices. But for most folk, they would fall into a rhythm or a pattern of what worked with their circumstances. So for us, for many years, what we did was we would do morning office publicly down at the little Catholic church here on the island. We did that for maybe 15 years, something like that. But for a long time, we kept that going every day but Sunday, and somebody would be there. And then we would do compline with the kids as we put them to bed. So they grew up always knowing that. But we didn't try and do more than that. We'd do a midday prayer if we remembered, or perhaps during Lent or something.
It's interesting because Linda's always kept the office alive for us as a family. And we'll see it come hell or high water ourselves. Right. And we fit ourselves in around that, depending where we are, what we're doing, in the community, where we're working or whatever. But I must say in recent days, especially because we live in a different environment, that the office has become a more regular thing.
More irregular or
more regular.
More regular.
Yeah, and I think because we need it.
I think it's different patterns for different seasons, and also very much it's better for somebody to aim less high and actually achieve what they aim for than to become discouraged by trying to do too much too quick.